And this is something that really you'll really experience returns on your time if you put in the time early. So checking comps, checking gem rates, evaluating margins, it can be done really quickly when you've gone through the motions before. I don't have a lot of free time. I mean, this is not my full-time thing. I work a 9 to 5, I have a family. I'm in master's school as well right now. So really have to be efficient. But again, just the more you know, the more that knowledge will kind of aid you throughout your whole process with buying and grading.
Hey guys, welcome back to the 1,000 Card Project podcast. I'm the host, McKeefery, and excited about this one. Reed Kammerman is with Synergy Cards on all the socials, but I came across Reed's content, just really digging into grading cards, and I think what he does is great. He gives back to the community in a big way, shares what he learns, and he's obviously got a great business for himself. But I have a lot of respect for people that go beyond that and create tools and share those with the community. And he's got a course, not a course, but a PDF. He's got a web app that he created to help track your expenses and things along those lines. So just kind of one of those guys that always kind of read my mind of the next steps of what I needed to kind of do in this hobby business. But man, H, coming on the show and just have a lot of respect for what you do.
Yeah, happy to be here. Really excited for this opportunity. It's great to talk the hobby.
Reed, I want to just do some quick icebreakers here. So what was the first card that you ever graded and what'd you get on it?
Well, the first card, okay, so I guess the first order I submitted was back in 2020. I submitted to SGC, and the very first card in that order, I submitted a 1990 Michael Jordan Fleer. So junk wax. I submitted like 14 or 15 of them. In that order. And I was just it was kind of a proof of concept thing. I was looking at the gem rates, trying to figure out, okay, if I get the average gem rate on these 14, I'm going to be doing really well. And so I got like 5 10s, which was really good. I got like 3 or 4 9 5s and then a couple 9s. And that was kind of what kicked it off for me. I've never looked back since. I mean, it was an SGC order and it took forever to get back to me, but that's all I really needed to really kickstart things on the grading side. So yeah, fun to look back.
You were already looking at gem rates even before your first submission.
Yeah, I guess I'm a very analytical person. I like to front load the research side of things before I put any money into stuff. So yeah.
Or what what's kind of your current focus in the hobby right now? Any kind of hot streaks or lessons learned?
Yeah, I mean, still heavy on the grading. I grade a lot of newer guys now. I still grade a lot of all-time greats, but it's probably more like 20% or so of what I grade, just because they're not as liquid, at least a lot of the stuff that I grade. So yeah, newer guys, getting the timing right. I mean, and vets as well. Otani, graded a lot of him back in June and July, got him back at the perfect time. And it doesn't happen every time that way, but you put yourself in those positions and it'll happen if you're timing things right. Yep.
Yeah, I definitely want to dig into the mechanics of it. I think just you got to, like you said, you have a really analytical approach. And I think when you take that, when you're that disciplined, then it's, you have a pretty good chance of making money with this hobby and this business. I wanted, first talk a little bit about just at what point did you figure out like this could be like a legitimate way for you to make money?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I would see videos on YouTube of people doing it, and that's kind of where I got the spark. And then, like, as I mentioned, that first order there, SGC order, it took like 10 months to get back to me or something like that. It was super long, pandemic times, that's just how it was. And I made I think like $1,000 profit on that order, which was a lot for me at the time. And that really was the spark for me. I just thought to myself, okay, if I can do this with SGC, wait till PSA opens back up, I'll be ready to go. Like I did some higher end PSA orders when when $50 was like the minimum grading cost that they had. But again, doing that research in the meantime kind of preparing for a new window to open up really paid off. So, yep.
Talk a little bit about, quite a, as I've been going down this journey, like I think that there's natural steps that you have to take to build the confidence to be able to say, you know what, I'll spend 500. And so that usually starts with like the dollar boxes and flipping your way up, with small wins and building that confidence to be able to buy that $5 card, then that $10 card and so on. But it sounds like you pretty much went grading pretty quick, and then just the grading costs, of grading to those 10 Jordans. I mean, you were making a $200, $300 investment off the jump. What gave you that confidence early on?
Yeah. Well, so really, how I got started was, back in 2020, I collected, up through my teen years and everything. Back in 2020, moved back home. I was in college. And I just pulled out my old collection, started looking through stuff, started looking up values, and stuff had gotten a lot more valuable. So I sold a bunch of it, and I got about $500 out of that. And that was my seed money. I just told myself, this is basically money that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I'm just gonna not even think of it as money to lose or to gain on. I'm just gonna experiment with it and see what happens. And to this day, I mean, that's been my process. I've never invested any outside money, any paycheck money or anything like that. I've just reinvested profits. And that's really helped me to get the confidence, because at the end of the day, it's like if you lose money, you're out some time, but it's really money that came from nothing, essentially, in my mind. So I guess that's been a confidence booster for me, because I know my family's not depending on that for livelihood, I guess.
I always like to start with like the end in mind and reverse engineer this process. So rather than talk about sourcing and those types of things, we'll get into that. But, I would think that the hardest part of running a business that's kind of focused on grading is probably the bankrolling of the grading fees, from month to month, and just kind of waiting that 3, 4 month delta there to kind of, to wait for that return. How would you recommend the person that wants to do it the way that you're saying, where it is the best way to add value to a card, how to start small and kind of get to that point where, and what is that expectation of how much money you kind of need to have in your bankroll to be able to support something like that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's a couple different answers. Obviously, it depends on how much capital you have, how quick you want to ramp things up. But I can only recommend what I started with, which is start with the cheap stuff. It's never been easier with GameStop now allowing PSA submissions. I used to have to stockpile 20 cards, and that would take me a month sometimes when I was just starting out. Now you can get 3 cards in or whatever. You can start with one if you want, submit it through GameStop. And then I recommend some kind of consistent schedule that you kind of hold yourself to. Once a month is kind of a good rule of thumb to start out with. If you can submit 5 cards in month 1, 5 cards in month 2, 5 cards in month 3, then you're going to start getting orders back, and then you can start scaling up 10 cards, 20 cards a month, and you can do twice a month. So it is kind of the snowball effect, but it's kind of painful if you're stockpiling up 20 cards, submitting one order, waiting 3 months to get it back, and then starting kind of from scratch again with that, reinvested profit. So once a month is ideal to start with. It doesn't have to be crazy cards. You can start with 3 $10 cards if you want. I mean, that was a lot of what I started with. I still grade a lot of cards in that dollar range.
Yeah, that's exactly what, like the way I look at it for my own business. And then I think I kind of recommend to others is it's almost like your stock portfolio, and a certain percentage of whatever your capital is going towards that piece of it. And for you, that's obviously very heavy because you've done the work and you have the confidence there. For me, it's a little bit of the low end liquid. It's a little bit of the Hall of Famers already graded. It's kind of a little mix. And I'm trying to build up that confidence in the grading piece. I know one of those challenges for me is always like, I hate losing, right? I hate getting the 9 back to 8 back to 7 back, whatever it is. Again, start with the end in mind and not everything going your way. How do you go about liquidating, those sevens, those eights that you get back?
Yeah, great question. I hate losing too. It's never ideal. It's never ideal to have to resell a raw card that you bought and it isn't gradable, but that's part of the game. I kind of bake that into my business model at this point using data. But I mean, liquidating those lower grades, a lot of times I'll just auction them off or send them into consignment if I really don't want to spend the time on it. And again, most of them are losses, especially with ultra modern stuff. You're rarely going to make money on the nines, but auctioning them off is okay. Again, I like to zoom out, kind of look at the aggregate of each order. If each order is a win overall, I'm not too worried about the minor losses in between. If you're losing money consistently on entire orders, I think you have to go back to the drawing board. But yeah. And with PSA offers now too, I mean, a lot of times they're making offers on even some of the lower grade stuff, no fees. So if it makes sense, if those offers are pretty close to comps, I just go ahead and take those. Saves me the work of having to list cards, auction cards that won't get a whole lot of interest anyway. So a couple options there.
Yeah, I think so. I was going to follow up with: are you dollar cost averaging kind of the submission and looking at it as a whole, kind of like a whatnot? My buy cost for these is average $2, and I got to go from there. So it sounds like you're doing that on a per order basis, which makes sense. I like that a lot. What about those cards? I again, just listening to your content. I know there's a lot of people. Like, one of the things I can't that really turned me off on eBay early on was all the condition monsters. Give me 10,000 pictures, and it doesn't quite look like this. And somebody that's like respectful, that's like, hey, this is all I'm trying to do. Can I get an extra picture or something? If I had a bad picture, then I'm all about it. But you seem to have this kind of quiet confidence and this kind of like easy going demeanor, to where it's like, hey, like, I get it in, I'll look at it. If I don't like it, it's not for me, I'll just liquidate it really quick and on to the next one. It seems like to me, maybe tell me if I'm wrong, that you're not one of these guys that's like, oh, there was a ding, you try to send it back and kill the guy in the comments or whatever. How do you go about handling that, to where maybe the listing wasn't what it said it was?
Correct. Yeah, yeah. So for the most part, I don't worry too much about that. If a card is listed as near mint and there's an obvious crease in it or something that would make it grade a 4 or something like that, I'll usually reach out about that. But for the most part, if there's little issues, I mean, near mint technically means PSA 7 in my mind. So if a card that I buy from eBay is listed as near mint and I don't think it's going to get a below a 7, I don't initiate a return or anything like that. And if it has the major damage or whatever, I'll note that in my description when I resell it. Sometimes I'll if I have a bunch of bulk raw cards to resell, I'll send them off to consignment, but I definitely don't send the ones to consignment that have major condition issues, because I know they're not going to look through it, and that's just going to screw over the next guy who buys it. But yeah, for the most part, I like to be really systematic and just, yeah, like you said, kind of get the cards in, get them out. Kind of two different paths. I either relist them raw or get them to PSA as soon as possible. I like to keep a low inventory and keep low cash as well. I want my big bottleneck to be at PSA, not something that's in my control. So
Yeah. When you're talking sourcing, you've mentioned Facebook. You got maybe specific eBay sellers and those types of things. How do you go? What's the way to at least first build that network up, and then once you do identify those people, I understand building the relationship and all that, and buying strong and doing all that kind of stuff works. But how do you do it in a respectful way to go and maybe get an additional picture, or make sure you're not making losses in the buy?
yeah, that's a great question. So most sellers that I've interacted with on Facebook, if you ask them for additional pictures of the back or a certain corner or whatever, if you see something kind of sketchy in one of the photos and you ask about it, most of them will be just fine. And in general, I think when you're building those relationships, it really just comes down to paying strong on your deals. Like, money really talks, and people will come back to you if you pay strong, and you'll want to go back to the people who sell you gradable cards. So you'll lose on some deals. If you pay 100% of comps for a card that doesn't end up being gradable on Facebook, well, I mean, you would have paid probably 100% of comps on eBay for it anyway. You take your 10-15% loss and just maybe don't buy from that guy again. But yeah, I mean, paying strong is everything for building those relationships. And most people, if you're upfront about your, what percentage you pay, and if you're upfront in that communication, they will not mind at all sending you an extra picture clarifying details.
What do you consider paying strong? I mean, I know you've talked about this in some of your videos, but when you say pay strong, is that 90%, 95%, 100%?
Yeah, that's a great question. That it means something different to everyone else. The great thing about grading, if that's your main business model, you don't need to buy at 75% to make a profit. Paying strong to me is 90% or higher. Sometimes I'll pay 110% of comps on cards that have a high gem rate and really good margins. I have no problem paying over comps for stuff like that. That goes for eBay and for Facebook groups, which are the two main avenues that I buy from. So yeah, in my opinion, anything under 90%, it would not be considered paying strong for me. Sometimes with bulk lots, I'll start the offer at 80, 85%. If there's a lot of stuff mixed in there that I wouldn't want to grade or that's harder to move. And a lot of times you can still get deals done with that if it's a bulk lot, if you can find that win-win area. But 90% is where I'm happy to be at. And most people are willing to comply if they're dodging eBay fees.
With obviously you've been doing this for a while, and you've developed your systems and your processes and strategy and all those types of things. One thing that just by watching you, like I'm just like, where does this guy find the time to be this analytical, do this much homework on the returns of a nine, the tens, and those types of things. Talk a little bit about kind of like how you structure your day, your week, and maybe is there times where you're like, okay, at the end of October or end of or start of November, I'm going to evaluate what 10 baseball players I'm going in on, and I'm going to go strong. The seasonality of that as well.
Yeah, that's a great question too. And this is something that really you'll really experience returns on your time if you put in the time early. Like it's not something that can be just picked up right away. I've been doing this, I've been grading for almost 6 years now. So really checking comps, checking gem rates, evaluating margins, it can be done really quickly when you've gone through the motions before. Sometimes you don't even have to look at the raw data if, new cards are coming out, they don't have PSA comps yet. But if you've gone through the process the year before, then you kind of know what to expect on those new rookies that are comparable to the previous year's rookies or whatever. And yeah, I don't have a lot of free time. I mean, obviously, this is not my full-time thing. I work a 9 to 5, have a family. I'm in master's school as well right now. So some days I don't spend any time at all on this. Some days I can spend 1 to 2 hours max. So yeah, really have to be efficient. But again, there's no replacement for really putting in that research early to kind of just learn how the market works, the types of cards that will have good margins when you grade them. I know that's kind of, it's not a super specific answer, but again, just the more you know, the more that knowledge will kind of aid you throughout your whole process with buying and grading.
There's I would imagine, just again, just hearing you talk and reading your book and those things, that there's certain time, there's certain things that you can almost bank on like clockwork, right? Every year the quarterback's going into the training camp, or there's going to be a ramp up there. The 2 or 3 stars on the 3 or 4 playoff bound basketball teams, like you want to get on them, whatever it might be. What are those kind of consistent pockets of segments of the hobby that are going to be consistent gradable cards for you each year?
Yeah, another great question. Yeah, for the most part, like you mentioned, those first round quarterbacks, grading them after their rookie season in the off season and then selling them before they start their second year, that has been a huge part of the game for me. It's, you have to really catch that window because we've seen obviously Drake May is the exception this year, but all the other guys have come down a lot since the season started, even the ones that are playing well. So I get harped on for that opinion a lot, but it happens every year. So you have to really catch that window. For basketball, it's a little bit tougher to target the rookies. It's either like a generational talent that you can catch, like Wemby. Cooper Flag this year is going to be a good one. But last year, there wasn't too much in terms of the rookies. So yeah, you kind of want to target those vets who are going to be in the playoffs. You can grade them, during the season or whatever, and kind of sell them right before the playoffs or during. SGA is one, Anthony Edwards is one, Jokic, players like that. And obviously you have the vets, the current players who have kind of established themselves as all-time greats. You can grade them year round. That goes for any sport. Baseball is the sport I know the least about. So I do pick a couple top rookies every year to kind of grade this time of year. But for the most part, I'm sticking with Ohtani, Judge, Bobby Witt, the guys who have kind of established themselves in their markets.
So when you talk, again, the rookies with like the quarterbacks, for example, that, this year was a really bad year with Prism with the quality control and things like that. How do you adjust your strategy when maybe the product isn't the set isn't a good set to to grade.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard. It's very much a letdown when something like that happens. When the biggest set of the year, at least, the average set, not the super high end stuff, does not turn out to be very gradable. And yeah, you've got to adapt. So not regular optic, but the Donruss optic preview this past year was really clean. And there's a couple ways you can find these things out. You can look at gem rates, but a lot of times they're pretty limited when the stuff is just coming out. So you can just buy a few, test out a few, see how clean the sets are, and just evaluating the designs as well. Like you could look at that Prism design from this past year. I could tell you before even buying any cards, this is going to have a low gem rate. It's got those black corners on the back. It's got terrible centering, not to mention all the surface issues that aren't really visible from the design itself. Terrible, terrible. And pretty similar thing with 2025 Topps Chrome baseball, actually. Those blue, green, whatever color corners on the back. It's
Yeah.
making it a tough one to grade as well. So yeah, I mean, you have to just look for the sets that will grade well, that also are still sought after enough to have margin. And there will always be some out there. Optic Preview and Select for football have been pretty good this past year, and Bowman Chrome for baseball this year. Yep.
When you're choosing, like you said, the premier product or the premier set from each sport, take baseball or maybe basketball as well. When if I wanted to choose a baseball player right now, let's say I want to take like Jackson Holiday or one of the Churio or Merrill or somebody like that. Which card are you targeting? Well, I mean, obviously you're going to do your homework, but is there a particular like the Topps Chrome? Well, out of 150, is I'm always going to look at that card first, and then I'm going to go maybe the other parallels, or is there like a hierarchy of parallels that you kind of check in here?
Not necessarily a hierarchy. I would say the Topps Chrome numbered rookies for the top guys are always going to do well. Same with the Bowman Chrome rookies. The Bowman Chrome first numbered as well, if you can find them when they're rookies. But I mostly stick to, yeah, Topps Chrome numbered rookies are where I go for the most part. If it's a guy like Otani or Judge, you can buy base rookies of them at this point and still do really well. So it kind of depends on the player, but most of the new rookies are not going to have those types of margins on their base cards. And most of them won't even have them on the non-numbered parallels. Like, I think Ellie De La Cruz was one last year who did, but that's more of an exception. So yeah, those Topps Chrome numbered rookies are my sweet spot for baseball for sure.
What about basketball?
Basketball, I mean, it changes a little bit every year. For Wemby's, I would say Prism color, like for Wemby, a Prism silvers and all the colors, even base for him was worth it. But for most of the new rookies, if you want to do well on the new rookies, if it's not a generational guy, Prism color and Prism numbered stuff is going to be where it's at for basketball and football for that matter.
How has things changed for you with the transition here to Tops and the licensing and a product like that's not going to exist next year, at least not licensed.
Yeah, that brings up a good point. I haven't bought any. I haven't bought a single Topps license card yet. Waiting for prices to cool down. I don't like to get into new sets too early. So I don't fully know how it's going to change. I do really like the top sets. That's what I grew up with. I kind of took a break collecting when Panini took over back in 2009, 2010, whenever it was. So I've been very excited for the takeover. I hope that they can get the quality better than Panini has had it. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of to be announced still on how that will change my process, but luckily, knowing baseball a little bit, I have an idea of what sets are going to be out, what sets are sought after enough. And when all else fails, just stick with Topps Chrome. Can't really go wrong.
One of the things again I just really respect about you is just you just seem to have a level head about kind of where things are in the process. So whether or not like everybody's getting caught up in PSA, FTC, yes, or whatever, it doesn't seem to phase you at all. You just play the game for whatever the game is at the moment. Where do you see the game going though? Like do you see it going to AI grading? Do you see anybody being able to kind of dethrone the PSA, or, kind of stranglehold there?
Yeah, great questions as well. I do think that PSA has a really, really strong grasp on the market. I think a lot more than people realize. It's easy to kind of say who's in second, who's in third, but the gap is so big right now. And I mean, once you start getting to this point where they're getting into consignment and they're getting into repacking and offers, it's like they're just tightening the grip even more. So I don't really see any changes in that regard in the near future. I do think that turnaround times should get better. And if they don't get better consistently, I do think more and more people will jump ship because that's a problem for people starting out. You know, for people like me who are submitting cards every 2 weeks or so, and you're timing it right. It's kind of like, you know what's coming back. You've got consistent orders going in and out. But for people starting out, that's really tough to swallow. So I think if they don't get that figured out, they could potentially lose a lot of business. But I don't see them losing significant market share anytime soon. It's just that's where people grade their cards, and that's what people want to buy in slabs. So that's the way it is.
Yeah, I made a video the other day. I really think that the only opportunity to challenge them at this point is for somebody that has the resources to buy BGS is the only name that really competes with PSA in terms of like market branding, market share.
Mm.
Turn it into an AI company that can fix the turnaround time and fix their grading scale. It's like about. I think if somebody did that and came around, it's like a 2 week turnaround with consistent grading, that would solve it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to see something like that. I mean, I'm kind of, I don't necessarily have like a, loyalty to PSA or to any company. I'm kind of just, I just grade where the
Whatever the
profit
value
is.
is.
Yeah. And if that changes, I'll change as well. No problems with that.
You mentioned, I think in one of your videos, just about how like, your process of going through and evaluating a card and, you try to do it as similarly to what a grader would do, where you just get it out. They're not using all these tools and all these things, but, for somebody that's just learning and, and really trying to get an understanding of it, what tools do you think are kind of a necessity to kind of develop that eye?
Yeah, another great question. So, one big thing that helped me out in the beginning was actually having a centering tool, and not for the reasons that a lot of people would think. It actually kind of trained my eye to realize how lenient PSA actually is on centering. So, checking with a centering tool can kind of be like, wow, this is 55-45. This is noticeably off centered, but this is within PSA 10 range. It used to be 60-40, now it's 55-45, but that's still a lot more lenient than people think just by looking at a card. And so I always say be strict on the corners and edges and be more lenient on the centering and the surface when you're inspecting. I think the only thing you need other than that is just a light. You really have to look at that surface. You really have to look at those corners from all angles, really see to really fully evaluate the condition of a card. And then having a microfiber cloth to wipe off any fingerprints is good as well. Those can affect the grade, so it's good to have stuff clean. But I would say a centering tool and a light for starting out, that's really all you need.
Talk a little bit about kind of the economics. You don't have to get into specific numbers or anything, but the economics of your business, of where maybe you started, or your suggestion of maybe going 5 cards a week and then scaling that. What do you scale to now? What do you think is a good business for somebody that maybe wants to do what I'm doing, where I'm trying to create maybe a $100,000 asset?
Yeah, great question as well. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables that come into play here. When you talk in numbers of cards submitted, obviously you have to take into account the value of those cards and the projected margins. So I kind of like to break things down to like a profit per card type of deal because that kind of helps me boil things down to an hourly rate for myself. So in the past, I've kind of said like $20 profit average per card. That includes the raw cards that you resell that aren't gradable, that includes the lower grades, and that includes the nines. So, from an hourly rate, that's a really, really good hourly rate. And I've found at least the past 3 or 4 months or so, my orders have been a lot higher than that in terms of profit per card. I submit around 100 to 200 cards a month right now, and those range from $5 cards to $1,000 cards. I would say most of them are in the $50 to $150 range. Oh, yeah, I mean, it really all depends on the range that you're targeting of raw card. But I encourage people to just kind of crunch the numbers and really see like how profitable this can be compared to the effort that it actually takes. I mean, if you submit five $10 cards in your first month, so that's $50 for the cards, $100 to grade them, and you get, 3 of them are 10s that sell for $80 a piece. There's 240 right there, and then The other two are nines that sell for $20 a piece. That's, I guess, 280, and then you're into it for 150. So you're almost doubling your money on that. Just simple example there. But that's very doable. That's very doable for at all levels.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the biggest things that I had to get my head around was even in a 9 or 8 or whatever, it's still easier to move those cards when they're graded,
Yeah.
and so even though that, you're not getting maybe you're taking a loss, at least you can get out of them quicker than maybe selling them raw sometimes. You don't really subscribe to kinda cracking them and trying to resell them raw. I mean, it's not really part of your business, is it?
Not for me personally, no.
Yeah, I kinda figured as much. What do you, at this point in your hobby business, is it 90% auto grade and the rest of it's just liquidating what you don't grade, or is there other strategies that you use to kind of round out your business?
That's really it. Honestly, I mean, again, I like to be very efficient. I'm a systems guy, so I like to keep things simple. Really, the only exception that I would make to that is when I come across a card for sale on Facebook that I know is way listed under comps and I can make an easy profit on it. Whether it's raw or graded, then I'll snatch it up and make money on that. But I don't plan for that to happen. It's not really my strategy. My strategy really is purely buy raw cards and get them graded. That's the beginning and end.
You mentioned Facebook there. Do you use any other marketplaces besides eBay and Facebook?
I've started to get into collects a little bit more, so very, very new still to that side of things, but I'll definitely be experimenting with that more so in the coming months.
One of the things that I think that you've done really cool, and I know I appreciate, and I know others do as well, is producing of the content around that, and creating some tools, to kind of support your business, but then sharing it with the community as well, and then also being maybe a revenue source for you in this business as well. Talk about a little bit about your book and your web app and how that integrates into your hobby business.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, I mean, the content, it's been a lot of fun. The fun part for me is being able to interact with other people. I really don't like recording myself in front of a camera talking. Oftentimes, like, I'm not the best on camera, I'm not the best speaker or whatever. I don't have a flamboyant personality. I kind of know my lane and I know that I can add value in my knowledge base, but it's very unnatural for me to talk in front of a camera. But I love connecting with other people. And I found that, once I started getting more into the short form content, I would have a lot of people messaging me and a lot of very similar questions every day. And I would type out like paragraphs and paragraphs to answer. And for a while I could answer everyone, but it started just consuming so much time. And I actually had several people, I started to have more delayed responses and stuff. And I had several people say like, hey, if you put all this stuff into a guide, an ebook or whatever, I'll buy it basically. So it's not something that I really ever wanted to do from the start, but it's turned into a good way for me to share the knowledge where people can have access to it and see everything, search through everything really easily without having to scroll through all my videos or wait days for a response from me or whatever. So it's become a nice little revenue stream as well. The web app as well, I created it to make data tracking easier for me because I hated spreadsheets. I wanted to be more organized and be able to do things quicker. So that's why I built that. And so that's also become kind of a nice secondary revenue stream. Both those streams are not even close to the main stream of actually doing the flipping, and I like it that way. But it's been nice to be able to kind of have those additional revenue streams and be able to kind of, add value to the hobby in that way as well.
Yeah, I know that was the thing for me. Like, I just appreciated all the content that you put out. So I'm big on Discord just because I don't know the Discord. I don't know how to use it that well,
Yeah.
but you have a Discord group that's very active as well. That seems to have a ton of great content in there, and then the software. I know that's something that I've constantly been trying to figure out a better way to do that that fits how I do things because it's all living in a spreadsheet for me right now, and it's creating more work than probably it's worth, that way.
Right.
But I'm like you, like I want to know my numbers. I want to know and have that analytical piece as well. We end the show here just with some quick kind of hitters here. What's next for you in your business? Do you see anything on the horizon as to an area that you want to grow personally?
I want to go full time. I'm really narrowed in on that right now. So In terms of additional revenue streams, there's nothing major. It's all just kind of building what's already out there. Scaling up the grading orders to once a week, I think, is a big piece. So just more buying, more content as well, put myself out there a little bit more. Eventually, I would love to get into hosting some shows. There's not a lot of great shows in my area, so I'd love to get into that side of things, but that's down the road a little bit further. But yeah, that's kind of what's on my mind right now for next steps.
That's interesting. I like that. Well, so when you say scale it up to once a week, are you saying you're saying, I think you said earlier, 100 cards, of 12 to 20 per week kind of goal?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get to the 50 per week, 50 cards per week, like consistently. So obviously I'm a ways out from that still, but I think I'll be able to do that still doing this part-time, and then we'll see where the revenue goes, if it's worth full time after that.
I didn't even really ask you about if you have any sort of personal collection or not, but I always ask kind of what if you had a PC or a PC card, what's the one that you'll never sell?
Oh, one that I'll never sell, that's tough. I mean, one that I really love and I'll have a hard time selling if I don't get the price I want is, so my PC is really mostly tennis stuff. So I don't really collect any of the major sports. I do a little bit of basketball, but a lot of that stuff is like I'll keep it until I get the price I want for it. But I have a Carlos Alcaraz auto, PSA 10 out of 2. I graded it myself. I'm a big Alcaraz guy. I'm a big Djokovic guy. Those are the two guys I kind of collect. And yeah, so that's one. I have a couple numbered Djokovic parallels as well that I probably will never sell. Those are they're not super expensive cards, but I like to collect that stuff. And then, yeah, that auto from Alcaraz is going to be tough to part with for sure.
But what's the tie to tennis?
Tennis is my favorite sport to play. Played in high school, and just loved it. Still play when I can, and I love watching it too. It's one of my favorite sports to watch, if not my favorite. I think, here in America, it's not as big, but if you know the game, just like any sport, if you know the game and you can really appreciate watching it and seeing the crazy stuff that's going on with these new guys. Alcaraz and Sinner are just incredible to watch. So that's the tennis story for me.
Great. No, I got to tell this story since you brought it up because I love tennis as well. It's surprising for a lot of people, but I grew up pretty rough, and then so I ended up pretty much growing up at the church. But this church was on a uh, had tennis courts and swimming pool, country club type place that was connected to. And so to get dates and to be hanging out with the girls, like they were playing tennis and they were swimming. So I did tennis and swimming, and
Nice.
I got pretty decent at tennis, but I was a football player and then a wrestler in high school. I played college, but I would go from football really intense to wrestling really intense, and alpha to tennis now where it's singular and I was and so I ended up making doubles as a freshman and varsity as a freshman and I was playing and we're just getting smoked by this other group, man. We're just getting killed. They're lobbing the ball up and laughing at us as they're beating us. We were seniors. I was a freshman. My partner was a sophomore, and I was getting pissed. I was getting mad, and so I ended up freaking slamming the ball. I threw my racket at him. I jumped the net. I'm chasing him around the freaking, and so I got called into the principal's office and got kicked off the tennis team. And the rest
Wow,
of
that's quite the story.
spring, the rest of the time, but I love the sport,
Yeah,
and it was. I wish I wouldn't have done that. But yeah, it was a good story.
that's
All right,
awesome.
last question. Just kind of where can everybody stay up with you and all the things that you got going?
Yeah, I mean, all the social media platforms, TikTok and Instagram, I post every day there, with a few exceptions. Yeah, I'm posting every day, and I really enjoy that. My DMs are open as well. Like I said, I can't get to all of them at this point, and I try my best. Yeah, the socials are great. You can find me there. Always happy to connect.
Yeah, well, like I said, man, at the very beginning, I think what you do is really cool, and I appreciate you just sharing the information. And you got like right now, you got a series going that is telling you legitimately great cards to grade that have good gem rates. That just if you followed and just bought those cards, you'd probably be doing pretty well. So I appreciate it, man. I know others do as well, and just thanks for coming on the show.
First, thanks for having me. It's been great. Thanks again.